and how black and brown gays view the issue.
Absolutely. And the difference is that African American youth take a yes and approach to the marriage movement. We want marriage, yes, and we want there to be more funding for people living with HIV so we can prevent and eliminate this epidemic that's ravaging our community, right? And so we want both. We want marriage and health care.
Cleo, I want to go to you, pick up on that particular point there, because when you're talking about, again, first of all, we've got an issue with your mic. Come on, come fix his mic, please, so we can hear him. Cleo, go right ahead to pick up on this point.
Well, this is an issue that needs some context. A lot of young same-gender living people, or so-called LGBT people, keep acting like homosexual whites are separate from other whites in terms of racist attitudes. And there's no separation. These are white people who are doing what some racist white people do in terms of what they prioritize. And black people tend not to be the priority for essentially white-run groups. And the gay community is no exception to that. So, I mean, it's interesting that he would mention that we want more funding for HIV. Well, there's an issue that also here, that the fact that the reason we have an HIV issue still is because we're going into the 40th year of neglect from the mainstream white gay community in terms of not allowing there to be enough support and resources and appropriate care for this community. So this is a very complex issue that goes beyond what's often being spoken about. There are differences in culture, history, and life context between black people and white people, regardless of sexuality.
Jasmine, I want to go to you on this one because, and we're trying to get the brother on the show. The perfect example, there's a brother who's over an LGBT community resource center in Charlotte, youngest, 26 years old, African-American, and when he got named, there were white gays who sent him emails and text messages calling him the N-word, saying he didn't deserve it, saying they will not work with him. And so what this report clearly concludes, and you know it well because you've been fighting this for years as well, there's a serious divide that is there. So you have this equality movement, but you actually have inequality within this movement.
Look, it's no different than what goes on inside the Democratic Party. It's no different than what goes on inside America, period. I can't believe we're still talking about this. If we have a problem as African-American, same-gender loving people with the way the quote-unquote LGBT movement is going, then we need to do our own thing. And I think a lot of us have. That's why the National Black Justice Coalition was founded. That's why you had other organizations that were founded that spoke more to the cultural needs of African-American, same-gender loving people. I mean, when you just look at how we refer to ourselves, oftentimes there's a disconnect there, right? Because you hear the LGBT movement, then you hear same-gender loving, and I just don't think, I mean, I'm laughing, but I'm not laughing. It's, you know, it's like, for me, it's like 10, 15 years later, we're still having this conversation about inequality in the gay rights movement. And it's like, well, what is our responsibility as African Americans, as black people? We need to take a hold of our own movement and move it forward and not always depend on the HRCs and the other organizations of the world to have our best interests at heart.
Terrance and Cleo, you were co-signing Jasmine. Terrance, I want to go to you first.
Absolutely. And young people, we have a saying, I didn't come for you, you sent for me with these movements. HRC puts me on their pamphlets. They raise money with black people's faces. So when they're having a conversation about black people, regardless to whether or not they're fully showing up for me, I'm showing up in that conversation, because you're not going to use my image and use my story to gain rights and then not speak to my issues. So I'm not begging for, and young black people in this report weren't begging for their support. We're letting you know that, and we're letting our allies know that when you talk about black LGBT people, you're talking about black same-gender loving people, you need to be speaking about these issues, because if you aren't, I'm not going to go let you have that conversation without me being at the table and presenting those issues.
And Cleo, what you have is you have organizations that go to the NAACP, they go to civil rights leaders asking for their support when it comes to a variety of initiatives, and you have been quite vocal about this as well. And again, as Jasmine was speaking, you almost came out of your chair.
Well, I'm surprised I'm still in it. But there's another issue here that's important, Roland. The black community, you've heard me say this before, so I'm being redundant, has yet to have a rational, constructive discussion about the existence of same-gender loving people as part of the black family. So as a result of that gap and that lack of rational engagement, our young people, because I used to be a young people once upon a time, are constantly at risk to be running toward white gays and a racist community for support and to be saved, because the black community will not address this issue in a way that is inviting and affirming, or at least neutral enough to have an intelligent conversation. So that's a setup for young people to keep on having to deal with the racism of white people in the gay community, which has not changed one bit in 50 years. And like the sister said, like Jasmine said, we're going into, she said 15 because she's a little younger than me, maybe 2 or 3 years. But this is 40 years of somebody, and not me, because I don't ask the white community, gay community for anything. I'm not trying to get nothing from them because I don't expect anything from them. It's not important to me. But our young people keep thinking that's the only way to go, and that's why we got to talk about the same gender loving movement more, because we need to be affirmed as black people and do work that's affirming and helpful to us instead of riding that empty ship over and over again.
Jasmine, final comment, about 30 seconds, go.
You know what? At the end of the day, the responsibility is on black people, okay? So what I need for is the NAACP and other black organizations to stop running to these mainstream gay organizations for what's the word on the gay community and come talk to their own people.
Right.
There are from Keith Boykin to myself to Cleo Monago, I can go on and on and on, of the African American LGBT leaders in America
SGL.
who can speak to this. Yes, SGL, who can speak to this issue and who can really shine a light on it. And at the end of the day, I also want to say thank you to Terrance for the study. It only confirms what a lot of us already knew. And Cleo, I'm more than just a little younger than you. I'm 36. Okay, I'm still a young woman.
No, you didn't try to out me on TV.
Yeah, she outed you.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't.
Now you got to tell your real age.
37.
You lying. You lying. You lying.
I'm 36.
You lying. You lying. I'm the only person honest here. I'm 45. Stop fronting. Cleo, you older than me.
That's not true.
Yes, you are. Terrance, where can people see the report?
BYP100.org.
Okay.
Yep.
Jasmine Koenig, Terrance, Cleo, was really appreciated. Thanks a bunch. Folks, coming up, Outkast, Andre 3000, Channel's music legend Jimi Hendrix will break it down for you. Up next on News 1 Now, 27 minutes before the top of the hour. Back in a moment.
If it sizzles and crackles and comes from a kitchen, it's breakfast.